under, I guess, some comments or questions, it says, I think in 3 or 4 paragraphs, per the applicant, they answer all the questions. That there's no harm, no foul, no, they don't see any problem.
Right.
Why is the applicant saying per the applicant?
Well, I mean,
It wasn't in the
staff
first one, now
agrees.
it's in this one.
Staff agrees with their statements, but we just wanted to provide is what they provided in their application, how they answered the question.
So if it turns out not to be the fact, can we go back to the applicant? Or do we go back to staff?
You go back to staff.
Well, why? The applicant said that there's going to be no problem. They agreed with it.
We agree with him.
Who is we?
Staff.
Well, y'all can ask questions. I'll take a break for a while.
Kevin, in our first document, in our new document, you were responsible for the posting, right?
Yes, sir.
What did you post it at the first time?
We did post, we just had misinformation on the posting.
Say that again?
We did post, we just didn't have the right information on the posting.
What? What, have you got the right information on this one now?
Yes, sir, we do.
Why didn't you have it the first time? Aren't you an expert in planning and zoning?
We just missed the code.
You're what?
We missed the requirements of the code.
Okay.
You made a mistake?
Yes, sir.
Oh, good Lord. People don't make mistakes.
Sure they do.
Plenty of them, really.
Plenty of them, and we're going to talk about it later.
Does the board have any more questions?
Yeah, let's take a break.
10 minutes.
10 minutes.
No, I'm gonna do it. 5 minutes.
Here, do you need all these? I took them. Well, they may have a clean, but there is a problem. They actually do have correct details.
No, they were passed out, they were distributed to us. This is, my copy. Yeah. Do you need to look at one?
Yes, I do.
That's what I have.
On this map here, what they're
Especially yes, I live 3 miles
That's a lot of information. A lot of times you say reference.
I can't think of one.
Information, but now you want to really, in reality, you see the signs, they're going to cost an estimate. It's Greek. I'm not saying.
Well, it's the most flexible. But you know, you guys are just like, mainly oil and gas.
When you do it over
I talked to him today, he said, you can say hi.
Get a lot, get each other.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I did one time.
That bugs me. I can't.
Maybe, I'm not sure, maybe I'm not.
Bring some. This is, these are houses that he has made.
That is, in the future,
That way.
yes.
Projects that you sound here.
Yes, I mean, if you look
Basically,
at,
that's what they're saying, they're doing sleep around. Most of
right, but due to the proximity of 17 being here, gravity being where it is, and the traffic, it's going to be, the vast majority of it's going to 17. And I think that's what he was saying, left-hand turn lane. Very little of the traffic that was actually, well, of course, there's really in most cases there, but very little of it's going westbound on 62. Some, sure.
Well, you see the new construction that they started is right. Because this is already been created. They were decided to I didn't know.
So there's actually less traffic now on 17 and less traffic now per the state's testing for trip counts than what there was 6 years ago.
It is 7:15.
We were gonna do there was a big regional,
It's a lot of water.
well, they were gonna do gasification.
I thought I had some trucks.
They got so many things at airports.
We broke it several.
They were gonna do that. They were gonna put in that cord, they were probably with the cord. They were in that house. I'll see you at the
I didn't see the water fountain.
There's a Coke machine, water fountain, bathroom.
Water, no.
Yeah, and the Coke machine. Well, there's a water fountain too. If you want free water, you can drink out of water fountain. All right, get 2 more minutes.
Left-hand side. Yes.
But we do try to get them out as soon as possible. So we just have an idea.
Well, shall we do it? Okay.
That's it. Do that once, so you get minutes.
Party meet today, you ready to go? No, where did you, how far did you go?
Oh, it's only 100 feet or whatever. Everybody knows 400 yards.
He's not thirsty. Calling the planning and zoning report back to order, please. All right, where were we?
Since we had this break, I was reading this other handout. Is this gentleman here?
He hasn't, that hasn't been presented yet. We'll know sooner.
Do you want me to wait till? Okay, never mind.
Okay. Where does that leave us, Kevin? Where are we at here? Who was on the, I guess we're up to, are we through with the questions from the board yet?
Well, I haven't got an answer on the 45-foot setback from building possible.
Okay. Maybe Kevin can help us with that.
If you feel there are incompatibilities that could be resolved by, you can increase that setback. That comes under the board's, they can do it by condition.
And it also says that they can run 24 hours a day, multiple shifts, 7 days a week.
Correct. Unless that's limited during the site plan process.
Anything else done?
I got all kinds of pages marked.
Or you want to continue, or you want to let someone else?
No, I mean, somebody else can jump in anytime they want to.
Board members, I'm gonna call. Questions?
Under CIBC, how many are permitted, not permitted?
I gave you the list, but I haven't counted those yet.
I think there's 8 permitted uses.
Right, and the rest come to the board, to this board, and some continue on to POCC as major special exceptions or special exceptions.
Okay.
But in the staff report, you have the full table.
I assume this is under hours of operation on page 12, 07, hours of operation. In that first paragraph, it says they can run basically 24 hours a day with multiple shifts, and then B, whether the intensity or density of use will be greater or lesser than that currently permitted for adjacent or current existing properties. The intensity will be the same for the properties to the north, which that's the existing park. We all agree with that. The intensity will be greater than the properties to the west, east, and south. Can you explain that?
Well, if you have FR at 1 unit per acre, and we have industrial zoning at 0.5 FAR, consider that more intense.
So you're saying that the industrial park is more intense than,
Yes, sir.
that shows compatibility.
Well, we feel it can be buffered. The existing buffers take care of any incompatibilities. And again, if the board feels otherwise, you can impose additional conditions.
Under J on page 13,
Yes, sir.
whether the detrimental effects of any identified incompatibilities can be mitigated or eliminated by adequate buffering. This is what you're talking about. There are potential compatibility issues anytime non-residential and residential uses abut one another. Any potential incompatibility between the residential area and the proposed rezoning area already addressed by the development standards of the ULDC. For example, per table 3.15D, a type D vegetative buffer would be required between any industrial use and the residential use. A type D buffer ranges from 20 feet to 40 feet in width depending on the density of the vegetation. The more narrow the buffer, the denser the vegetation. And he goes on to describe how many trees and all that's available in that area. So that's all that's there is proposed a landscape buffer.
Yes, sir, because it's existing code.
And that's already in the setback.
Yes, sir.
Should there be you get something imposed to make it more compatible?
The P&Z board has that right to impose additional
Conditions.
conditions. Yes, sir.
Okay.
And would that be done tonight or later on?
It can be done tonight.
Well, okay. So let's say we say there's going to be a type D, 40 feet wide, whatever trees and whatever else. And a building comes along and they're going to be real close to the buffer setback. And the building is 40 feet tall. Do you think a 5 or 6 foot buffer, 8 foot buffer is going to hide a 20, 30, 40 foot building?
You could address that during the site plan review process.
But that's during the site plan.
Right.
So why are we wasting our time doing it now?
If you felt that there was areas that were strips or areas that were incompatible now, you can oppose it at the rezoning, or you can do it at the individual site plan review.
My opinion is if it's incompatible, it doesn't pass.
Yeah.
Now, if it does pass, yeah, there's going to be a fight on every single one of those lots, especially that abut those residential areas. But I just don't think it's compatible and it doesn't fit. But again, that's my opinion. And I haven't seen anything from the last meeting to this meeting to change my opinion. Because nothing has been addressed.
Again, if you're concerned about these issues, you have the right to impose conditions tonight, or you can do it during the site plan review process.
Or I can deny it.
That's your right.
Right under that, the 3 or 4 conditions that must be met, it says we shall or we may rezone it if those conditions are met. I don't think it meets it.
Well, with that said, we have other people that want to speak, so if you would kind of hold back a little bit.
We're here for hours. Anybody can talk anytime they want to.
That's fine. I'm just saying, if you're, can hold just a little while, we'll let someone else speak. I'm going to turn it out to public input. Please try to hold it to 3 minutes. We'll do that. We'll see what happens.
Hank Coleman, 5186 Ollie Roberts Road, Fort Greene. I may go over 3 minutes, just a little bit. If you bear with me. If I'm worth listening to, I'll talk. If you don't think so, I'll sit down. This is really simple. I look at it like a railroad crossing. You approach the railroad track and a bar comes down. You stop. You're not allowed to cross until that bar raises. You're not allowed to sneak around it and maybe come back and get on the other side before the train comes, or stop twice next time, or whatever. The simple thing with this rezoning, if you read your UDL or ULD, it's a very simple, it's 1 or 2 paragraphs here. It's very well laid out. Mr. Chansey was right on the money. You are not allowed to cross this railroad track unless competent and substantial evidence is presented that shows that possible negative impacts, the incompatibility issues, all of those things have been addressed to the satisfaction to make sure that the adjoining neighborhoods, Hilltop School, all those people, you keep talking about Osprey Lane, there's other people who live around Old Braden Road. I saw a police car right here at a very nice house yesterday with a sprinkler system running. You are not allowed to pass a rezoning unless all of these issues, the data has to be provided by the applicant, the analysis has to be done. Mr. Denny is supposed to be giving you competent and substantial evidence. He didn't do that. The engineers did their best with what they have to work with. I like their map, but they have no idea what's going to go in lot number 18. Well, all we have is a list that allows chemical plants, fertilizer plants, slaughterhouses, explosives, you name it, all kinds of manufacturing. It is the sky is the limit stuff. There's nothing that can't go in there. Not a single thing. This is the most wide open zoning available to Hardee County. There's no reason for that. If it's true that nothing more is going to go in there than is in the existing Commerce Park, which is only half full, by the way, I don't think nothing new's come in there since 2008. There are no new jobs in there. They're building these spec buildings and giving them away. So if no higher use is going to be in the expansion than is the existing, then zone to that. It's I-1. Light manufacturing. When they bought that land in 2008, the reason to get the money to buy it is said light manufacturing. The issue before us tonight is only one thing. Are you going to allow industrial uses in what's supposed to be a commerce park? The sign in front of when you turn on there, it says Commerce Park. It doesn't say anything about waste processing, anything like that. If you allow 24-hour operation on 104 acres, you can't buffer away sound, odor, toxic water, drainage, you name it. The list goes on and on of the things that can't be satisfied. You are not allowed to rezone. You can't pass this because they have not met the standard. The railroad crossing is down. It's not coming up. Now, my second point.
Make it quick.
Highway mixed use is the land use. There's nothing in highway mixed use that requires industrial uses. As a matter of fact, highway mixed use says you have to closely integrate residential and commercial in a high density. That's what highway mixed use is. You cannot integrate people next to heavy industry. Next point. Mr. Denny, at the last meeting you were at, there was a Hispanic lady here, didn't speak English, a translator. The question was, could we be impacted by this change? And Mr. Denny, I'll answer for you, Kevin, said, yes, you could be. Now, Mr. Denny has no idea. He knows it could be bad. Chancey said it right there. You got a 50-foot building, they got a stamping mill in there, or they're cranking out fertilizer. You know it's going to be bad. I mean, if there happens to be a west wind, that school could smell of a slaughterhouse. Then they tell, trust us. We don't trust anything. If you tell us you're never going to do it, then zone to that. You zone for what you tell us you're never going to do. It's so simple. It's so simple. Now, there's a lot of reasons for not approving this. I mean, a lot of legal reasons for not going forward. Just about done. I sent a letter to every school board member. Mr. Durastani, I'm looking at these names right here. I sent letters to all these people about this before the last meeting. Nobody showed up. Now, how can that be? The school board, they don't care about those kids over there. This project is in the backyard of every person in Hardee County because everybody's kids goes through junior high. Don't you think that the school board might want to have some input? I would be very concerned. I would want to know what the hell could possibly go in there. My last point. They haven't presented any data they're grabbing for these traffic counts and stuff. They're making these wild assumptions about there's only going to be 300 employees. They brought what they could call an expert in impacts. He's a real estate agent and an appraiser. He doesn't know anything about air quality. Any of those impacts, glare, noise, odors, property values, he's guessing on that. Lighting, all of the stuff that's in your list. There's a whole list of stuff that has to be proven. If they can't prove it, it's impossible to prove it. Do you see any buildings or any artist conceptions where they got the plants out in front of the building and they're telling you what they're going to be doing there? It's blank. How can you provide data looking at a blank piece of paper? Now, I blame Mr. Denny for going along and getting along. I mean, he didn't have to do that. He could have told, as the planning department, sorry, Mr. Lambert, but you got nothing here. You're going to have to come back when somebody actually wants to buy one of those pieces of property. Then we'll zone one lot at a time if you want to do it like that. Otherwise, zone them all for light manufacturing. Something everybody can live with. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if I could respond to a couple issues. I do want to clarify, the school board was notified of this
Via
meeting.
letter.
Yes, sir, they were.
I'm not blaming you. They didn't answer it.
Give him a chance, Mr. Coleman.
Okay, school board was notified. Mr. Coleman is making a big deal about the fact that we don't have buildings or anything else on this plan. We do not do that at the rezoning level. We do that at the site plan level. That is how our code works. We go to comp planning, which is the most general level. We go down to the rezoning, then we go to site plan review.
That's
Kevin, at the first meeting, what he said, I jotted down. You said to the Hispanic lady, you responded, it could. Remember that?
No, sir, I don't. Honestly, I don't remember stating it that way.
Okay.
Kevin, just so everybody understands, in 2008, when the future land use was put on, that is not a zoning. That's a future land use, the highway mixed use.
In 2008, yes,
Right,
sir.
that's the highway mixed use,
Right.
flume designation. For them to build this park, they must have CIBC on top of it.
Yes.
Okay. You said we don't have buildings and all that there. I'm going to go back again to 7.04.05, what our responsibility is. The proposed rezoning and all permitted uses. It's not the ones that we don't know about, but we have to consider them all.
Correct.
Are compatible with development on surrounding property, or compatibility can be achieved by the imposition of condition. That's what I think. I know that's what I'm saying, but I think that's what everybody else is trying to say. They don't know what's going to be there because any one of those characteristics can be there, but we're not supposed to look at it because that could even change. We all know that site plan presentations are not pertinent to the rezone. It's a representation, but once it's rezoned, they could go out there and change it all around.
You will see this back as a plat.
I understand that, but the plat that comes back could be different than that.
Yes, sir.
Right. So instead of 20 lots, there could be 27 lots. Whatever configuration you want to be. Then the surprise comes with the application of each building. It's like a slot machine. Which one is it going to be? You don't know. You can't stand there today and say what's going to be in those lots.
No, sir.
But we are supposed to consider all the zoning and CIBC as potential for those lots in this rezone. And we're not just talking about a single-family development that's only, we're making a housing development that's only going to be houses. You have a multiple list of permitted special use, major special exception, and site development plans that can go in there. And are you saying that they're compatible with FR zoning?
I'm saying that we do have some standards that help with compatibility. that are already adopted, you have the right to impose additional conditions here or at the site plan process.
I've heard that.
You also have the right to do it during major special exceptions.
Okay, I have other people that want to speak. Kevin, are you okay?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Just,
Brian, go ahead.
just two, real quick.
Okay, because I have other
Yeah,
people that
I don't want
speak.
to jump in anybody's way. I thought Gordon asked a good question. I'd like to get some clarification on it earlier. He asked about permitted uses, right? And, what a great country. You come out here and argue like this and try to express our differences of opinion, but
Did you use that?
eight permitted uses, you said, right? So, play this out. A use comes in, and if it's one of those permitted uses, then it doesn't have to come before you guys, correct?
If it's a permitted use, it does not have to come.
If it is not a permitted use, it has to come before you.
Right.
Okay. So let's look at what the permitted uses are. It helps me. There's only 8 of them, so we have time to do this. It won't take long. First permitted use, manufacture of finished products and repair, agriculturally related. Second, wholesale sales, agriculturally related. Third permitted use, agriculture equipment rentals and sales. Fourth permitted use, county buildings? Is that right? Did I skip any? Fifth permitted use, fire station. Sixth permitted use, sheriff station. Seventh permitted use, post office. Eighth permitted use, okay, I skipped one.
Private club.
Private club. So if it's not one of those 8, you get to see it again.
Not a slaughterhouse in the bunch there?
No, if it's not a post office or a sheriff's office or a rental sales or something like that. So you get to see it again and either deny it or impose restrictions that can lead to compatibility, as the code says. So anyway, I thought I'd make that point. The other thing, say briefly, you guys will probably consider this, but good gracious, there's nothing, you can leave it like it is. And somebody could plant some crop out there that would just mess your world up as existing residential use. And it's perfectly allowable. You know what I'm talking about. You guys know agriculture, or it could be a residential use. And so when, I heard Mr. Denny was asked a question, could this impact you? And he doesn't remember it, but his answer would have been the same answer I would have given, because well, yes, it could. That's honest. To say anything else, it could impact you negatively or positively. But you guys are paid to make sure that doesn't happen, and you guys aren't paid, but I commend you for your community service. They're coming out here and giving you time. But you can leave it alone and folks can get impacted. And there would be no purview of the Planning and Zoning Commission. You don't get to see those site plans for uses such as agriculture. You don't have that control. But unless it's one of those 8 permitted uses, which are pretty benign, you get to see it again and you can deny it at that time. But the proposed zoning allows the flexibility to have options. Not that much flexibility, because most of them have to come back before Planning and Zoning Board, and I think that's a good thing.
Okay, Steve, I have people out there that need to speak.
Go ahead.
Mr. Kirk, Benny, I'll get you over here.
That's all right, that's fine, that's good. I'm not gonna take long, Benny. I wouldn't either, that's good, everything been said. Here, come on, I'm good, I'm good. Come on. Let me get real quick, I got one question out of this whole thing here. My name's Benny Hash, 1920 Dansby Road, Wauchula, Florida. I haven't heard anything, that place up there is wet, which I'd like to hear from, is the Gods of Water named Swiftmud, because that could have a real detrimental effect on all of this stuff. I would just like to hear from, have a member down here, let them look it over, give their opinion on this, because you got a lot of wetlands up there and a lot of floodways and everything else in this piece of property. I'd just like to hear from them. They are Gods of Water, and I thank you very much for putting up with me, and I know I didn't come here to beat you up. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Benny.
My name is John Terrell. My wife and Tito Terrell and I own the adjacent property to the Commerce Park. And I am not coming in opposition to the Commerce Park. My brother sold that land to the Commerce Park. I was not involved, nor should I have been involved. And I have no problem with bringing jobs into Hardee County. The problem I have, I received this letter recently stating that you are going to rezone, or they were making an application to rezone the industrial park. And I started to throw it away. And then I got to hearing people talk about it, and I thought maybe I ought to do a little research, and maybe I ought to find out a little bit about it and let my thoughts be known. Now, CIBC, when I first read that, I thought that might be a root beer brand name. I didn't know. I knew designation of ag, I knew residential, but I won't pose as a zoning expert. But when I did some research, and the gentleman just said there were 8, well, I tell you what, the materials I found were not consistent with what he said. You are allowed under this zoning to have the manufacturing, storage of explosives, a chemical plant, a commercial incinerator, a fertilizer plant, a transmission line. And then there are other things that they could come in with no further review by the county commission. I tell you what, I'm at the age where you may not have to put up with me a lot longer. I hope not. I hope I'm here. But I have a family that I want to pass that property on to. And if some of these things were to come to fruition, it would be terrible. And I'm not only thinking of me, I'm thinking of the people to the other side of the property over there. But most of all, I'm thinking of the school. And Mr. Coleman a while ago alluded to the fact that everybody in Hardee County that has a school-aged child, as it's set up now, will go through Hardee Junior High. And that property adjoins this property. And I think that is too high a risk. I think that's too high a risk. And you will say, well, trust us, we won't do it. And it reminds me of the old girl that reached dating age in Wauchula. And she unfortunately came into contact with one of the good old boys that had been around the block a few times, and he kept saying, trust me, trust me. And finally she did, and she wound up with a broken heart. I don't want us winding up with a broken heart. And I want to challenge you on your vote to think of the school children in Hardee County that could possibly be affected by this. Thank you.
No, they haven't got,
Okay.
just got my bid in.
Horst Vitronka, 652 County Road 665, Ona, Florida. When I came to Hardee County, when I was here early, I'm an engineer, very versed in noise ordinances, and I'm making a general statement. If you think that planting trees or planting pottery in order to mitigate noise, I'll help you out. I've offered to help out with that. When I came here, the county was about to pass a noise ordinance setting 70 dB at the property line, which is in Chicago, heavy industrial US Steel at their property line, 70 dB, 24 hours a day. That's their legal limit. Mr. Lambert, I gave a presentation and he said, let's listen to Horst, let's start this proposed thing over. They had a 5-0 commissioner, unanimous, kill it and start over. And the reason for that ordinance was they had the 1,000 vehicle trailer park with Salito Lindo, noise complaint, and that thing went away too. So what I'm trying to get across is that any vegetation or anything like that does not reduce any noise, which is generated by huge sources, which is the whole wall of a building. Whatever goes inside, the big wall is a big noise source. Vegetation or trees or buffer zones like that, finer, those analysis, they were flawed for reducing the noise. Thank you very much.
Excuse me, but I've neglected to do something. I'm getting the age where I forget things. But when I got into this thing, I realized that I was not a zoning expert and it might be more than I could grasp. So we have enlisted an expert, Mr. Max Fogarty, and I'm going to ask him to come forward and represent me on the technical and legal end of that. Thank you, Max.
Thank you, Mr. Terrell. I will address a couple of legal matters, but I'm not an attorney, and I want to make that clear. I'm representing him as a planner.
As a what?
As a land use planner.
And I see on the document that was passed out, your AICP.
Yes, sir, I am.
Can you explain what that is?
The AICP is the distinction by the American Planning Association for persons who have pursued a professional course of study and have taken an exam. I have been a member of been AICP since 1993.
So you're not just a planner, you're an AICP certified planner.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
I have also been a planning director, as you can see from my resume. By the way, I ask that my resume and my report be entered into the record. I have as well served for 3 years on a planning and zoning commission, very similar to yours, and I understand the challenge that is before you. I'm going to ask your indulgence this evening because I want to walk through this case through your comprehensive plan, and I'm going to take a little bit more time, take a bit of time. I'm going to ask your patience.
That's how much time?
About 10 minutes.
Okay.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I'm a little confused. There isn't enough there isn't enough for everyone to have one, so what did you want me to distribute? I have an agenda. I have 3 career objectives. I have Pinecrest Lakes 3. I have rezoning information out of the ULBC. I have planned unit, so there's not 7 for my board all now have this packet that was distributed.
Excellent.
Is that enough?
The extra stuff?
That's what you just handed me.
That's these 2 documents?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
You have enough?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Excuse me, Mr. Forgy.
Thank you. On behalf of Mr. John Terrell, my client, I wish to respectfully challenge the recommendation of approval which appears in the staff report for case REZ 1401 and in the narrative by Mr. Schneider of Hunter Engineering dated February 27, 2014, on grounds that the application, if adopted as proposed, would be inconsistent with the Hardee County Comprehensive Plan and upon the following additional grounds. First, that the application for rezoning fails to provide a factual basis to justify a major change in zoning for a large parcel of land. Second, that the proposed action is premature and should not be considered at this time. Third, that the proposed use is incompatible with existing neighborhood residential uses, such as Mr. Terrell has already addressed. 4, that the proposed use will place long-term impact on neighboring public schools, and I will address the participation of the school board in a moment. 5th, that neighboring property owners and residents did not receive sufficient legal notice of the intended action. That has been discussed already. And last, that the proposed use should not be approved via conventional rezoning, but would be more appropriately evaluated as a planned unit development.
Why is that?
I will explain. I'd like to address that later on. I will address it at some length, because I want to talk about what the conventional rezoning can and can't do, and why there is another way. The request before you is to change the status of a 104-acre parcel of land from FR, farm residential, and R3, multifamily residential, to CIBC, commercial industrial business center. This is a significant change to a large property and one which will impact Hardee County for decades to come. The existing uses are typical of the land patterns that have characterized rural Central Florida for generations: single-family dwellings, citrus groves, mobile homes, single-family dwellings. And neighboring existing land uses, as explained in the staff report, are likewise consistent with the historical rural nature of the area, with the addition of the middle and elementary school, which are also right on the edge of this property. So I'd like to begin with the highway mixed-use future land use map category. Objective L1 of the Hardee County future land use element requires that, quote, amended uses of land be consistent with the future land use designations as described in this element, close quote. Policy L13 defines this category and identifies a broad spectrum of possible uses, which specifically include residential, commercial, industrial, recreational, public, and other uses. But it imposes 3 qualifications on those uses. 1, that they be integrated with each other. Quote, to be developed in close proximity to maintain or reduce distance between residences, employment areas, commercial areas, and entertainment areas. It mandates that an access management program will be developed to regulate access to primary transportation corridors. And it requires that transportation levels of service be monitored and enforced pursuant to the policies of the traffic circulation element to ensure the continued vitality of Hardee County. I will demonstrate that these conditions have not been satisfied in this application. Policy L133 imposes conditions under which industrial uses may be permitted. These conditions are exceptionally permissive. They require unspecified buffering from neighboring uses and that floor area ratio not exceed 1.0 and that impervious lot coverage not exceed 90%. In other words, if it's a 104-acre site, theoretically, 104 acres, 90% of those 104 acres could be covered, and 10% of that could be two-story. I understand that that's an extreme case, but that's what it says. Objective L2 addresses timeliness, which says that development orders and/or permits for future development shall be issued only if public facilities necessary to meet levels of service standards are established as part of this plan and are available consistent with the established level of service and concurrent with the impacts of development. In the February 27th, 2014 letter from Hunter Engineering, there are two more comp plan policies that are cited, L21 and E34. So we ask the question, is the proposed action consistent with the Hardee County Comprehensive Plan? It does not meet the three conditions imposed by policy L13. One, neither the application nor the staff analysis offer competent or substantial evidence that the parcel will, quote, be developed in close proximity to maintain or reduce distances between residents, employment areas, commercial areas, and entertainment areas. Number two, neither the application nor the staff analysis offer any competent or substantial evidence that an access management program will be developed to regulate access to primary transportation corridors. I don't see that in the staff analysis. And number three, neither the application nor the staff analysis show how transportation levels of service will be monitored or enforced. I will later explain how they can be. In the absence of binding site plans, and I appreciate that you now have a site plan that's been offered, such as might be offered in a planned unit development process and approved as a part of that process, it is impossible to say whether the application as proposed is consistent with policy L133, which imposes very minimal standards for industrial development, which could theoretically allow 5.5 million square feet of covered area on 4 million square feet of impervious surface. Absurd as these figures are, policy L133, when viewed in isolation, does not prohibit so high an intensity of use. This open-ended standard, with its blue sky limits on FAR and impervious surface, and its blank check allowance of land uses, by default, defers decision-making to the rezoning level. In other words, to you. This proposed rezoning is inconsistent with Objective L2 and with Policy L21 because neither the application nor the staff report provide competent and substantial evidence that public facilities necessary to meet levels of service standards are available consistent with the established impacts of the development. I want to address inconsistencies in the staff analysis. Page 8 of the staff report addresses levels of service on US 17 and State Road 62. It posits that a 104-acre parcel developed at a maximum FAR of 1.0, quote, could generate 3,402,226 million square feet, thereby resulting in an ADT generation of 23,713 trips. That is from the staff report. Our calculation is higher, but we won't quibble. Either way, this is a large number of trips. The staff report offers no credible estimates of employment figures, no assumptions about the types of businesses and traffic that they will generate or the length of their trips. Elsewhere, on page 9, potable water use is projected based upon the assumptions that there will be 440 employees, 20 per business, 22 businesses total. These figures for traffic and potable water do not mesh. Will 440 employees generate 23,713 trips? How much of that traffic will be truck traffic and customer traffic? This is simply not enough competent and substantial evidence to make a reasoned decision in this case. I refer you to 2 cases in Florida case law, Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County versus Snyder, which establishes that what you are doing here is a quasi-judicial hearing in review of this case, and Pinecrest Lakes versus Scheidel, which makes the comprehensive plan binding in your deliberations. You've already heard a very good explanation from Mr. Chansey of the requirements for zoning amendments. I defer to my written remarks. And Hardee County's Land Development Code, Section 70405, requires that the Planning and Zoning Board recommend approval only when 3 findings and recommendations can be made. These are: 1, consistency with the comprehensive plan; 2, the rezoning will not degrade 1 or more levels of service; and 3, compatibility with the surrounding property. Additional justifications for recommendation of denial: 1, the application for rezoning fails to provide a factual basis to justify a major change in zoning for a large parcel of land. 2, the proposed action is premature and should not be considered at this time. 3, the proposed use is incompatible with existing neighboring residential uses. 4, the proposed use has the potential to impose long-term impacts on neighboring public schools. 5, neighboring property owners and residents did not receive sufficient legal notice of the intended action. The above items were addressed by Mr. Terrell. I want to look briefly at the spectrum of uses allowed in the CIBC category, which are inconsistent with residential uses in public schools. They include the following representative uses that may be approved by special exception: manufacture and storage of explosives, chemical plant, commercial incinerator, fertilizer
This will have
plant.
to be allowed by special exception.
By special exception.
Yeah, 3 votes.
I understand.
And the test for a special exception,
Count that down.
a very different test for a special exception. There are none of those 3 criteria that we discussed earlier as for a conventional rezoning. Special exception, the test is quite loose. And honestly, I've been doing this for 25 years or more, and the best time to make land use decisions is early in the process, not later on at special exception time, variance time, permit time, because that's when you hear from staff and from the applicant, oh, that decision was already made. You should have been here when the future land use map was adopted. You should have been here when the comp plan was amended. You should have been here when the rezoning happened. You could have addressed it then. The more of those decisions that are made, the less opportunity, the less discretion you have as a body.
That's correct.
The following uses may be approved without review by the Board of County Commissioners: pipeline for distribution.
You got 3 minutes.
Drinking establishment. I will. Freight trucking terminal. Recycled materials processing. The action that we are requesting is that the Planning and Zoning Board reaffirm its previous recommendation of denial, in support of the additional findings of fact in support of the recommendation to the Hardee County Board of County Commissioners. 1, that the proposed rezoning is inconsistent with the Hardee County Comprehensive Plan. 2, that the proposed rezoning has the potential to degrade one or more levels of service standards. 3, that the proposed rezoning is incompatible with surrounding land uses. You have a PUD option, planned unit development. It is section 7.05 of the Hardee County Land Development Code. It allows for a collaborative decision-making involving state agencies such as the Water Gods of Swift Mud, FDOT. It allows you to work with the school board of Hardee County, and particularly to work with the neighbors. There are people like Mr. Terrell. Mr. Terrell is not asking that this never be considered as a commercial or even an industrial use, but that it be master planned and that we take a closer look at what we are doing. I have one other matter that I did not want to raise, but it has come up, and that is Florida Statute 163.3174, Local Planning Agency. It requires that the school board be a member of this, a non-voting member of this body. If the school board is not present here, then someone needs to remind them that it is their responsibility to be here and to weigh in on this matter. I am surprised to hear that that is the case. I thank you very much for your patience with this. I know this has been rather technical, but I thank you very much.
Excuse me, I do have one
Sir.
quick question, because I am a stickler for accuracy. And you stated the square footage of the buildings and that based in the staff report, they're not the same that's in this staff report. When you said page 8, this is page 8, but the numbers, I just want to know who's right.
Very good. I believe that the one I was working from wasn't numbered. Is that, wasn't numbered at the bottom?
Was that the previous staff report from the last?
I am looking at the most recent staff report.
Well, the most recent that I have, and I think it's the one, I haven't grabbed the wrong one, says that there's 15,492 trips, not 23,000 and change. That's what I brought up earlier.
I stand corrected. It says page 6 at the top, and I did not see that, and I penciled it as 8 of 32 on the bottom. And I think it probably also showed as page 8 on the PDF when I read it on the screen. Thank you. Other questions? Thank you.
Sir, if you could stay up here, I have a couple questions for you.
Well, there you go. I don't care. As long as just remember.
You quoted chapter 163 for the school board representative. Aren't they required to be here only for residential development?
If they would increase residential development on the property that is the subject of the application.
Correct.
However, this does not, this subsection does not prevent the